So if you are a parent, or if you are a caregiver of any sort, whether you're not a parent, you maybe just be like a teacher, or a auntie, a uncle, a step person, a adopted parent, whatever. If you are a caregiver, and you are wanting to shape the child's behavior that's under your care, we're going to talk a little bit about how to do that, because we all have these children who are in our care, our biological children or otherwise, and maybe they are behaving in a way that we would prefer them not to behave, or maybe there are some behaviors that we would actually like to encourage them to do that they're not yet doing, all right? And so here are just a few ways that you can kind of help modify the behavior, encourage the behavior, develop the behavior, you know what I'm saying? And so B.F. Skinner, who is big in the world and industry and field of psychology, came up with this term called operant conditioning. Operant conditioning, all right? Just big words that mean you want to introduce rewards and introduce punishments. You could change that word if that feels too harsh, but introduce rewards and introduce things that feel like we don't really want to do those, aka punishments, into a child's experience. And the rewards should, in theory, encourage behavior to continue or to begin, and the punishment should discourage the behavior from continuing. Okay, and so let's talk a little bit about how to do that. How to do that. All right, there are 4 categories here. We got positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement, positive punishment, and negative punishment. Again, the reinforcements should encourage the behavior to increase. They're gonna keep the behavior going that we want them to exhibit. All right, the punishments, we're going to introduce those into the mix if we want to encourage them to stop a behavior or decrease a behavior. All right, so let's talk a little bit about what each category looks like when you are actually applying it in real time with your child. Alrighty, so if you want to encourage behavior, this is my top recommended approach: positive reinforcement. Okay, positive reinforcement is I'm going to give you something positive to encourage you to continue to do the thing that I would like you to do. So, for example, I might give you some positive attention, some positive words. Like, oh, I really like the way you raised your hand in class without, me having to ask you. That is me encouraging you to continue to do it, and I'm giving you praise and acknowledging that you did that thing, or, I really like the way you brush your teeth without me having to ask. That's encouraging them to continue to brush your teeth without needing to be prompted. I'm going to give you that positive attention. Other types of positive reinforcement include a chore chart, not a chore, well, a rewards chart. Let's say it could be a chore chart, a stickers chart. Like you did your chores, you get a sticker, or a rewards chart is probably the best way to put that. You get rewarded in these little ways for doing the actions that I'm expecting you to do and I'm desiring for you to do. What else? Giving a point system, like, oh, you get this many points, and then at the end of the week you get a prize or an outing of your choosing or something like that. That's something that I think most children will appreciate. Giving privileges, like, oh, you get extra time on your electronics or something like that. You get to stay up later. That's all positive reinforcement. You're giving them positive rewards that hopefully will let them know, like, good job, keep doing what you're doing. All right, so negative reinforcement is hands down the trickiest one to kind of like explain, but I'm gonna do my best. All right, negative reinforcement involves removing the unpleasantness of something, removing something that the child probably doesn't want to do, but they're going to do it so they can get the reward, right? And so, for example, negative reinforcement might look like, hey, you don't need to do that chore today. You can skip that chore because you've been doing so well with doing A, B, and C, right? So how about you forego doing your chores today? And that's a negative reinforcement. That will encourage you to continue to behave the way that you've been behaving. That earned you this negative reinforcement anyway. So that's one thing. Negative reinforcement can look like you're not nagging. You are removing the nagging. So I'm gonna not nag you. I'm going to remove the unpleasantness of nagging in hopes that it will encourage you to just do what you're supposed to do without needing the nagging. Okay. This could also look like lifting a restriction. Like maybe there's typically a restriction on bedtime, electronic usage, something like that. And negative reinforcement will look something like, I'm going to extend your time or remove the restriction in some way in hopes to encourage you to continue this behavior. Again, negative reinforcement it can be confused sometimes with a punishment of sorts, but really what it's doing is it's increasing the wanted behavior. It's like I'm going to withdraw or remove something that is not so pleasant, unpleasant, in hopes that it will encourage the desired behavior. All right, so typically positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement are what we kind of feel are like the gentle parenting styles, which that's my preference, However, I do know that there are some people who prefer more of, I'm going to say like a punitive kind of way of shaping their child, or they just want to really like make their point land in a way that is a little bit, they lean in a little bit more is what I'll say. All right. And if that's the case, then you would possibly be using positive punishment and negative punishment to kind of make your point more clear and to kind of encourage certain behaviors and discourage certain behaviors. So let's get into what these look like. So positive punishment is exactly what it sounds like. You're going to be adding something, some type of unpleasant something to this child's experience to discourage them from continuing to behave this way. All right. And so this could look like, verbally, you are saying some words to them that like, it could be nagging. It could be just overcorrecting. Those are positive punishments in a sense. You could be making them write, you know how they used to have to write, I will not tell a lie, I will not, hit my brother or something like that. Like, I will not do this like 50 times, that's a positive punishment, is having like them do a thing, giving them like PT. Some people like to, make them do push-ups and things like that. Some people like, some parents are supportive of corporal punishment, giving them a tap, giving them a slap or a hit, to discourage them from doing a behavior. Some people will add more chores. You might add more chores and say, okay, well now you got to do this, that, and the third, more than you usually would have to do because of the unwanted behavior that you've been exhibiting. And so all of these behaviors, you are adding something unpleasant to the child's experience to let them know, like, don't do that again, or you will have this unpleasantness to deal with the next time and the next time and the next time. All right, so with negative punishment, this is where you take away something that the child wants. You take away things to encourage them to not do that behavior again. So you might put the child on a timeout, which basically takes them away from the fun that they were having or from doing what they wanted to do. You take away their free time or their social time or something like that. You put them on a timeout. All right, that's a negative punishment. You take away something from them that they enjoy having. You take away their phone, their iPad, their video game, their toys, something that they desire to have. You take it away from them when you're implementing negative punishment. Some parents will ground their children, especially like when they're in the teenage years, the older years. They'll basically take away your opportunity to spend time with your friends. It's almost like a teenage version of timeout. You take away your privileges. Maybe change your curfew. You had to be home earlier. Something of that nature. Like, you taking away the curfew it could be both positive. You are giving them a different curfew. You're giving them a negative, like giving them a curfew, or taking away the freedom to be out later. It depends on how you word it. Okay. But both of them are punishments. Both of them are undesirable. And the child should be like, basically, it should make the child think like, I should not do whatever I just did because it will cause me to have this restriction, which I don't want to have. And just overall, making a child miss out on activities that they might actually want to participate in. Like, oh, now you can't go to that sports event that you were going to go to, or now you can't go to that birthday party, or, you know what I mean? Like, taking away or causing a child to miss out on activities that could be placed under a negative punishment. And again, the whole point of the punishment, positive and negative punishment, is to decrease whatever that unwanted behavior was that that child exhibited. All right, so here's some things to consider when you're implementing this process, or this behavior management system, we should call it. And these are call it what you want. Pro tips, master parenting tips, call it what you want. Bonus tips. Consider that what I've just described to you is a system that is full of artificial consequences. All right, these are consequences that you have, concocted in your mind to apply to these situations, these scenarios, to help your child exhibit more of the wanted, desirable behaviors, or to decrease the undesirable, unwanted behaviors. Okay, these are artificial consequences, which do work, by the way. So don't let the word artificial make you think that I'm speaking down about these consequences, but these are artificial consequences. So keep that in mind, because there are some scenarios where you don't need to do any of this. You just can allow the natural consequences of things to unfold, and those natural consequences will be enough to discourage unwanted behavior and or encourage positive behavior. So keep in mind, sometimes natural consequences is the best way to let things unfold and to help modify your child's behavior. Also keep in mind that this system may not be effective for all children. It may not be effective for all dynamics. All right. This system of positive, negative reinforcement, positive, negative punishment can breed some not so healthy, not so comfortable circumstances, especially the punishments, the positive and negative punishments. They can breed resentment, aggression, emotional distress. They can be, in some situations, traumatizing, all right, and harsh and counterproductive. So understand that the system I am describing to you is a template, but there is also some conversation amongst professionals about whether this is effective, all right, especially the punishment, whether the punishments are an effective way to modify behavior. Okay, so do keep that in mind as well. And that brings me to my third point. Lean into the positive and negative reinforcements more than the punishments if you can, because I think, the positive reinforcements and negative reinforcements, those can encourage the wanted behavior and still kind of keep the relationship with you and your child intact, a little bit better than the positive and negative punishments, because when someone that you are, you love and you trust and you look to for safety, that's you as the parent and the caregiver. When someone like that is harsh with you, from a child's perspective, they can't understand why you're being harsh to them. They just start to equate love with harshness. Or if someone that you trust and you feel like they're a source of safety and provision and things like that, when they are like verbally aggressive with you or physically, like spanking you and basically using physical violence against you, that the child can't separate your intentions from the actions always. And so they begin to equate love relationships with verbal abuse, physical abuse, and they justify it, because they were raised in that type of a system where that was normal, where the person who loved them and who was supposed to protect them and who was supposed to provide for them was also the very person who might have bullied them, who might have abused them physically, verbally, etc. And so lean more into the positive reinforcement and negative reinforcement as much as you can, and then maybe sprinkle a little bit of punishment, positive punishment, and negative punishment in there. You know what I mean? Like 80-20, if possible, okay? Obviously, I cannot tell you how to parent, and I won't dare, but You're watching this video up until this point for a reason. You're looking for something. And so you want to modify your child's behavior. You want to encourage wanted and desirable behaviors. Good. These are some of the evidence-based and just personal lived experience type of recommendations that I find to be very helpful. So hopefully this was helpful. Happy parenting out there.